In the modern world of love, where texts are answered with indifference and emotions are replaced by strategy, there is a truth that most women have never heard clearly. Have you ever wondered why the more you give, the more sincere you are? The more you try to be the ideal lover, the more distant the man you love becomes. Why do women who seem to make no effort seem to attract men to pursue them to the end? The answer lies not in cheap psychological games or stereotypical tricks. It lies deep in the structure of the male unconscious, a mechanism that has existed for thousands of years. Today, I want to take you through the door of a world that few have ever dared to enter. A world where the secrets of male psychology, from Carl Jung to modern neuroscience, are exposed in the light of truth. This is not a course in flirting. This is an enlightenment, an awakening to how men love, why they become addicted to emotions, and what keeps them from letting go of a woman, not because of the body, but because of something much deeper, mental obsession. Not every woman makes a man desire, but there are those who are not the most beautiful, not the most gentle, not the most pampering, who make a man miss her endlessly, search for her madly, even change his whole life just to be with her. Why? Because she understands what millions of other women ignore. Men do not love with their eyes, do not love with their ears, they love with their wounds, a primitive wound deep in their minds. A wound that Carl Jung called the darkness of the soul. And only when you know how to touch that wound with a feminine wisdom can you awaken the most intense part of a man's heart, the desire to prove his worth. What I'm about to share with you isn't a trick. It's a roadmap, a journey to understanding men on a level they don't even know themselves. And when you do, you'll stop asking, how can I make him love me? And start asking, does he have the guts to love a woman like me? The power shift begins with awakening. And today, I'm going to show you 3 psychological secrets, 3 doors that lead to the deepest part of a man's mind, where love is not just born, but marked by commitment, passion, and total devotion. You've heard of dopamine, the hormone of reward. But did you know that dopamine only really surges when your brain is challenged? And did you know that in love, you can become that challenge, not by making it difficult, but by going deep, by arousing in him the feeling that he has to fight to be worthy of you? This is where all the old definitions of love need to be replaced. It's no longer about who texts first, who reveals more. This is where you hold the map to the land of true attraction for men. Not because you try harder, but because you understand better. If you're ready to embark on this journey, go ahead. Because what you're about to learn will forever change the way you see men and the way men see you. Think back to the times you loved with all your heart. The times you were willing to sacrifice sleep to listen to him talk about his day. The times you texted first, asked first, worried first. And then, what happened? More attention, less response. The closer you got, the farther he got. The more you loved, the smaller you felt. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you were unconsciously going against the way the male brain responds to affection. When a woman loves a man, her instincts make her want to give. She wants to prove her love with presence, care, tenderness. But ironically, these seemingly right actions make her too accessible in the eyes of men. And this is where we have to face a hard truth. Men do not appreciate what comes too easily. This is not a personal opinion. It is a biological mechanism. Neurological research has shown that when a man achieves something that he has worked hard to achieve, his brain secretes more dopamine. Dopamine does more than just create a feeling of pleasure. It creates a reward effect, making men attached and feel valued when pursuing, conquering, and achieving goals. The problem is that when your love, care, and presence are given unconditionally from the start, his brain biologically stops seeing you as a reward. You become taken for granted. Women often make a big mistake. They think that by loving more, men will feel it and respond accordingly. But in the male mind, logic doesn't work that way. He doesn't love you because you give him a lot. He loves you because you arouse in him the feeling that he needs to become someone worthy of you. And that only happens when there is a certain gap between what he wants and what he can easily achieve. Carl Jung once said that a man is motivated not by what he has, but by what he feels he lacks. When you give him too much too soon, you inadvertently take away the feeling of lack that is necessary for love to form and grow. He no longer feels the need to fight, to prove, to make an effort. And without effort, there is no dopamine. Without dopamine, there is no satisfaction. And without satisfaction, there is no deep commitment. This is why unpredictable women, who are sometimes not very enthusiastic or available, drive men crazy. They don't play games. They just unconsciously hold back their value. They don't give everything up front. They let the man experience the process of conquest. They become the target, not the free prize. Another important factor: identity. Many women lose their identity when they fall in love. They dissolve into the man's world. They change their interests, their schedules, even their opinions just to keep him around. But at that moment, they are no longer the woman who attracted him in the first place. The independence, the mystery, the individuality, the things that attracted him gradually disappear. And he loses the desire, the need to prove himself, the stimulation of his brain. The result? He withdraws. Not because he no longer loves, but because he no longer feels the need to conquer. Remember, men do not love because they are loved. They love because they feel motivated to be worthy of that love. Your love must have value. And value is not in how many times you text, cook, or give in. Value is in knowing who you are, keeping your boundaries, and not giving more than he has proven he deserves. You may be thinking, so I have to pretend? Play games? The answer is no. This is not manipulation. This is understanding. Understanding the psychological and biological mechanisms of men so that you do not repeat the same mistakes. This is awakening. It is repositioning yourself in love, not as a beggar, not as a person waiting for recognition, but as a person who knows your own worth. Once you understand this, you will no longer feel disappointed when a man does not return your feelings. You will no longer need to compete with sacrifice, because you know that your presence, when placed properly, is the greatest reward he will ever have to strive for. And when that happens, love is no longer a hopeless pursuit. It becomes a journey in which you are the center of desire. There is a kind of look that makes a man stop in the midst of his ambitions. A look that is not to praise, not to flatter, but to reflect back to him who he can become. The woman who knows how to see that what is hidden beneath the achievements, the titles, the social roles, is the one who can awaken in a man the strong motivation to change, to rise, to prove. That is the power of the mirror of the soul. Carl Jung once said that what attracts a person is not the light of others, but the light that shines on the unawakened part of themselves. A man can hear hundreds of compliments from friends, colleagues, fans, but none will shake him as deeply as a look from a woman who makes him feel, she sees me, sees what I am not, but can become. Jennifer, one of my clients, is a perfect example of this. She was in love with a successful, talented man who was completely indifferent to her. She tried everything to get his attention, working where he hung out, posting pictures on social media, pretending to run into him. Nothing worked. Until one day, she sat him down for a casual chat and said, "Do you ever think that you're living below 70% of your potential? I've heard you talk, and I don't just see a talented person. I see a creator the world has yet to see." It wasn't flattery. It wasn't a ploy. It was a true reflection. Jennifer saw the unfulfilled side of him, and she dared to say it with respect, not expectation. From that moment on, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Not because she was prettier, not because she became physically attractive, because in his mind, she has become an icon, an image that connects to the deepest part of the male subconscious. The desire to prove his worth to a woman he feels he needs to conquer spiritually. You may be thinking, so I have to set the bar high. The trick here is not to demand, it's to suggest. It's not to criticize what he hasn't achieved, but to reflect with your eyes and words that you see something more extraordinary than he has ever realized. When a man feels that you believe in a greater version of him, he will automatically go on a journey to prove it. Not because you asked, but because you have awakened his deepest instinct to prove. Neuroscience shows that when a man receives a positive challenge signal from a woman he admires, his brain releases dopamine and vasopressin, two chemicals linked to reward and attachment. But this only happens when your words tap into his true, unfulfilled self. That means you're not just saying, "You're great." You're saying, "I see greater potential in you that you're not showing the world." It's the gap between now and that potential that creates the powerful pull. And what's most important is the energy you bring when you say it. It's not a demand. It's not a disguised disappointment. It's a respectful acknowledgement. I see you can be something extraordinary, and I'm here not to correct you, but to witness your journey. Like a mirror, you don't force, you reflect. But because you don't force it, what you mirror carries tremendous weight. It makes him yearn to step into that version of himself. Not because you demand it, but because he wants to see himself through your eyes. To be recognized not for being perfect, but for being on the journey to becoming. Real power doesn't lie in fixing a man. It lies in giving him a reason to fix himself. And that power doesn't come from flowery words, but from deep presence and the ability to see past what others only see. When you can mirror his soul with non-judgmental eyes, with non-manipulative words, you become part of his journey to shape his identity. That is irreplaceable. That is unforgettable. And at that moment, love is no longer just a feeling. It becomes a mission, an invitation to grow together. And you, no longer a woman looking for love. You become the woman who makes a man discover himself. There is a strange but powerful paradox in the male psyche that most women are not taught. The more constantly present, the more easily forgotten. The more predictable, the less desirable. This is not a psychological game, nor is it willful indifference. It is a deep mechanism in the male brain, programmed by millions of years of evolution. What is uncertain, not easily possessed, creates excitement, stimulation, and attachment. The male mind is not activated by a steady, regular, predictable presence. It is awakened by controlled fluctuations, by meaningful absence. That is why women who are always busy, with rich personal lives, who are not there for him all the time, always attract more men. Not because they are cold, but because they maintain a mysterious space for themselves. And that space is where men are stimulated to imagine, urged to explore, and crave to enter. Neuroscience research shows that uncertain expectations produce more dopamine than certain rewards. That's why gambling is addictive. And that's also why love sometimes fades when everything becomes too clear, too safe, too available. When you always text first, always respond immediately, always ready to meet or change your schedule to accommodate him, you inadvertently lose the element that the male brain responds to most strongly: sweet uncertainty. Sarah, one of my clients, is a smart, open-hearted, and extremely devoted woman in love. She always shared everything about her day with the man she liked, from small things like a cup of morning tea to her feelings during a client therapy session. But he gradually asked less and less, took less initiative, and eventually quietly withdrew. Sarah didn't understand why. She didn't do anything wrong. She just did what she thought was loving, sharing her entire inner world with the person she loved. I told her to try something different, not to deceive, but to restore the necessary sense of deprivation. The next time he asked about her day, instead of detailing it, Sarah just smiled and said, "Today was special. Something happened that made me see things differently. Maybe I'll tell you about it sometime." There was no refusal, no avoidance, just a way of keeping a piece of herself to herself. And something magical happened. He started asking more questions, paying more attention, texting at more unexpected times. Because Sarah's presence was no longer something to take for granted. It became something to be explored. The presence paradox doesn't tell you to disappear, to cut off contact, or to be cold. It just reminds you that the value lies in being present in the right moment, not all the time. You are a treasure keeper, not a convenience store. When you are always open, you lose the sacredness of the encounter. But when you are present with choice, with depth, with the fullness of yourself, every appearance becomes an event. And men subconsciously crave events more than familiarity. That is also why maintaining a private life, from work, friends, passions, to dreams you have not yet told, is not only your right, but an indispensable part of creating emotional attraction. When you have your own world, and you do not let anyone, even the person you love, completely penetrate that world, you create a sacred distance. And men, with their instinct to explore, will always find a way to step across that distance. Jung called this process individuation, self-fulfillment. When you show up on your own terms, without blurring your identity to fit in with someone else, you attract more than just men. You attract the right man who is mature enough to be fascinated by your spiritual independence. He will be attracted not just by your looks or your sweetness, but by the fact that you don't need him to complete you. And because of that, he will want to be a part of the life you have built with all your heart and soul. So, show up selectively. Speak less, but more deeply. Keep some of yourself a secret, not to control, but to protect your own energy. When a man doesn't know exactly what is going on inside you, when he has to guess, wait, crave a meeting, that is when you are leading with the energy of a goddess, not a pleaser. Don't trade your presence for instant attention. Let it be a gift that he feels lucky to receive every time. Because the biggest paradox in love is not that distance kills emotions, but that too much presence makes emotions no longer have room to live. And the woman who understands that is the one who does not need to run after love, because love comes to her. Deep inside every man, there is a part of him that he hides, not only from the world, but sometimes from himself. That is where his fears reside. Fear of not being good enough, fear of rejection, fear of not being worthy of love. Jung called this part the shadow, the part of the self that is denied, suppressed, but that silently controls behavior, choices, and emotions. And in that shadow lies a magical opportunity for love. If you can reach it without hurting, if you can shine a light on it without judging, you can awaken in a man a kind of attachment that goes beyond reason. The third secret, the most powerful and profound, is not in looks or sex appeal. It is in your ability to create a space where a man can let go of his mask, shed his strong shell, and allow himself to be vulnerable without fear of being judged. There, the woman is no longer an object of mere desire. She becomes a spiritual refuge, a mirror that reflects not only the light but also the imperfections. And that is where love becomes irreplaceable. Amanda, a client of mine, was in love with a man who everyone said was incapable of love. He was cold, avoided commitment, and always appeared stable and confident. But after a few brief dates, Amanda sensed that something was being hidden. She didn't press him, didn't demand commitment, didn't try to force him to open up. Instead, she shared a very personal story. A betrayal by the person she trusted the most, and how it made her question her own worth. Not to whine, not to seek pity, but to say that she understood the fear, and she didn't judge it. A few weeks later, one quiet evening, he burst into tears. For the first time in his life, he talked about how he had been belittled by his father throughout his childhood, about the obsession that he had to be successful, cold, controlling to be accepted. Amanda did not console him. She looked into his eyes and said, "I don't see you weak. I see a man brave enough to face his truth." That was when love was born. Not because she was prettier or gentler than anyone else, but because she dared to face his darkness and not run away. When a man allows himself to be vulnerable with a woman he respects, his brain responds with more than just emotion. It creates a powerful biochemical cascade. Oxytocin, the hormone of deep attachment, often seen between mothers and children, between lovers during orgasm, Between people who are truly connected on a spiritual level, this cannot be created by strategy. It only happens with truth, courage, and emotional security. But to reach a man's shadow, you have to dare to face your own shadow. You cannot lead others through fear if you have never acknowledged your own. The first step is to stop denying the hurt, the disappointment, the times you were belittled or lost. Not to wallow in it, but to understand. You have been through it, and therefore you are able to support others through it. Vulnerability does not make you weak. It makes you a place of healing. The key here is conscious presence. When he talks about failure, don't rush to say, "It will be okay." When he talks about fear, don't try to deny it with empty words of encouragement. Look him straight in the eye and say, "I see that fear, and I still see you strong." That's when you don't just see him, you help him see himself whole, complete, worthy. This is the kind of love that makes a man unable to leave. Not because he is dependent, but because he is freed. Not because you save him, but because you allow him to be himself without acting. That is the deepest healing, when a person no longer has to pretend to be loved. And you, by touching that darkness, do not weaken him. You strengthen him. You become his rebirth. There is no image more alluring to a man than the image of a woman who dares to enter the most chaotic part of him and stays, not to control, but to accompany, not to make him dependent, but to help him free himself from his own inner constraints. And in that moment, he no longer sees you as a lover. He sees you as a symbol, a place to return to. That is the ultimate power. Not to make him crave you because you are distant, but make him need you because you are the only place where he can be himself. Whole, complete, light and dark. This is where love is no longer an emotional exchange. It becomes a ritual of awakening, and you are the guide. Knowledge without action is dead knowledge. What you have learned about the soul mirror, the paradox of presence, and the encounter with darkness will be meaningless if you do not know how to apply it to your daily life. So now is the time to move from awareness to action. From understanding men to making them see you as the woman they cannot forget. Start with your presence. Not by showing up more, but by showing up in the right way. When you are with a man, be present. Not by looking at your phone, not by being distracted, not by trying to please. Observe him with a listening eye. Ask not superficial questions like, "What are you doing these days?" But, "Is there something you want but are afraid to pursue?" Or, "If everything were possible, what would you choose to do in life?" These questions open the door to his untapped potential. And that's when you reflect not with advice, but with a deep affirmation. "I see something bigger in you waiting to be unlocked." That alone is enough to start changing his mind about you. Next is the paradox of presence. Build a life where you don't need him to feel complete. This doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means being yourself. Sign up for a class you love. Go for a walk alone and feel enough. Turn off your phone when you need some introspection. When a man realizes that you don't wait for a text, don't need reminders to feel valued, he begins to crave being a part of that world. And when he asks, "What did you do today?" don't give details. Say, "I learned something really cool about myself today. I'm still thinking about it." That ambiguity is not for fun, but to keep a sacred space for yourself. A place where only those who are truly worthy can enter. Finally, there is the act of touching the darkness. You don't have to go deep right away. Start with yourself. In a conversation, gently share something you once saw as a weakness. "I used to be afraid of being judged as too ambitious. I tried to hide that part, but now I've learned to love my desire." Such a simple sentence creates a safe atmosphere where he feels that it is acceptable to have a dark side. And if one day he shares something that makes him feel inadequate, don't react immediately with a soothing response. Look at him, nod and say, "I understand, and I see the strength in you for saying that." It's how you see it that makes the difference between a casual conversation and a deep connection. What all these actions have in common is this: you don't do it to impress. You do it to be real, to live out the knowledge you already have, so that every word, every moment with that man is an expression of a deep understanding of yourself and of him. Then you don't have to try to be sexy. You are sexy, not because of your looks, but because you have become the woman a man not only wants, but deserves. And that's when your actions begin to create a real change in the way a man loves you, no longer instinctively, but with presence, desire, and respect. There's something too many women learn wrongly early on, that to be loved, you have to become smaller, less smart, less strong, less successful, less charismatic. Too many have been taught that if you're too bright, you'll scare men away. If you're too ambitious, you'll be called selfish. If you're too independent, you'll be called unlovable. And so you start to cut yourself off, hide your strengths, hold back your opinions, pretend to be weak so you don't make him feel smaller. But the truth is, what attracts a man isn't the smallness you force yourself into. It's the undeniable vitality you bring when you dare to be yourself. There's nothing more attractive than a woman who walks into a room with a clear vision of who she is. There's nothing more men respect than a woman who says no to something that doesn't work for her, whether it's in love, work, or her own life. Your integrity is not something you have to dim to make someone feel more comfortable. It is what makes you truly valuable. A mature man will not run from your light. He will want to stand next to it. He will want to reflect it back with his own light. True love does not come from doing everything to be loved. It comes from stopping doing everything to get love. Jessica, a successful woman in finance, once told me that she used to hide her achievements when meeting new people. She was afraid that men would find her too formidable. But after working with me, she began to change. Instead of avoiding talking about her success, she spoke about it calmly and proudly. Instead of pretending to be innocent to be approachable, she allowed herself to be sharp. And what happened was amazing. The man she thought would never accept a woman like her said that it was her confidence and clarity that made him unable to look away. When you stop asking permission to shine, you attract people who are not threatened by that light. When you live with integrity, you don't have to fit in for anyone. You start filtering out those who are just looking for a shadow and attracting those who are looking for a companion. This isn't a feminist statement. It's a psychological truth. Because when a woman lives her truth, that confidence creates a real biochemical reaction in men's brains. They are attracted not just to her looks, but to her life energy. The energy that makes them want to be the best version of themselves. Integrity doesn't mean you don't need anyone. It means you don't have to lose yourself to keep someone. You can still love passionately. You can still be gentle. You can still give your all. But not by dimming yourself, but by loving from a place of fullness, where you don't need love to feel worthy. When you love from that place, it becomes deep, strong, and truly lasting. Never dim your light to be loved. Shine brighter to see who can handle your light. And if someone has to leave because you shine too brightly, know that they were not born to walk that path of light with you. Women of integrity don't ask to be loved. They are chosen because they choose themselves first.